All right. God damn it. Yeah, totally unprepared. I forgot to open my voice meter banana thing that I use to do the outro with Passio telling people to do the great work, so this world isn't such a hellhole. Yeah, very unprepared tonight, and yeah. So yeah, I just noticed that the levels, I had no levels, and I was like, what? Normally it goes into the yellows and the reds, and it's all green, and there was nothing. Now there's something. All right, so I got to start all over. I was explaining the Great Work Launchpad. The purpose of this podcast is to try to get people launched into the great work. So that is why this image that I made, I found an image of a rocket ship, and it's to get ignited, to launch yourself into action, into that work. And the great work, as defined, I think, originally, I don't think anyone's defined it before Passio in this way, that the great work is to end our enslavement. And you can also refer to it as ending evil or ending immorality, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the ending of our enslavement is an ending of evil, the ending of immorality. That's what enslavement is. It's evil, it's immoral. And there's other people who've talked about similar things, but not under the terminology of the great work. Like you have the book, The End of All Evil, and that's the point of it, is to get to an end of the evil, so that we don't enslave ourselves, and then we're not enslaved, and then we can, by caring about ourselves to that degree, we can realize that we shouldn't enslave others, potentially other species, and that's a goal that some people don't align with and don't want to hear. But focus on your own species and then work outward from there. So that's what we're trying to do. The great work is try to end human enslavement, the immorality that we create to each other, and put an end to that so that we can actually live in true freedom. So that's the goal, is launching people, helping people get launched into this effort. So you can come on here and you can, if you're shy and you don't know how to get started, this is a place where you can come on and get more familiar with how the process works of having your voice out there, of being on the fly in the moment, having to add your thoughts to a topic of conversation. When there's something being talked about, you can have input and have your say. And maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe you need to take in more knowledge. Maybe you need to, in that trivium, that knowledge, grammar, input part, you need to understand more things, so that when topics are talked about, such as on this podcast or any other podcast you listen to, you can comment or you can chat with other people about the subject matter. But if you don't understand the subject matter or you haven't learned it, then you're not going to be able to participate. So here's where you can, if you have the knowledge, or if you don't, well, you can learn. And if you do have the knowledge, you can find this as an avenue to help you get started into that work, so that you can eventually make a podcast of your own, or an audio, or writing. Writing might be the easiest. We've been through it in the previous episodes. These fear factors and limitations that we have for doing the great work, these excuses we tell ourselves, that was the previous 4, on the excuses that people have for not beginning, not getting started. And now we're going to get into, well, why should you begin? As a counterbalance, a counter argument, counter reasoning against the excuses side, the more fear side. And that's why this ongoing series has to do with fear versus love, or fear or love as what is motivating you. Because if your actions are not towards doing the great work, towards ending our enslavement, towards ending the evil, ending the immorality, and you're not trying to figure out how to do that, so that means you're not even on the path to that as a goal. So you need to have it as a goal, and then you work on the requirements to be able to do that. So the requirements to ending our enslavement is moral education. Ultimately, at the highest level is moral education, because freedom depends on moral behavior. So the more people that are immoral, the more we get enslavement overall as an aggregate condition. So you have to have that goal. I want to end enslavement because I want to be free. And then to get to that goal, there's the requirements of doing the great work. And then there's requirements for doing the great work, which is having the knowledge, learning the knowledge, putting it out there. And that's what this podcast is about, is trying to help people get out there, put information out that can potentially reach other people. Not that it's going to guaranteed reach other people, but the potential is there. Because if you don't do it, then the potential doesn't even exist. People aren't going to have that potential. And the more people that do it, the more the potential for the content that can be accessed by people, as opposed to if there was only one person doing it, well, then there's only one person that everyone in the world can come across. But if there were 100 million people doing it, well, that'd be a lot more content for people to potentially come across, and more people being influenced and understanding this and working on themselves, doing the shadow work. Hence why this is shadow work 31 and fear or love, what was it, 13, 16. So it's an ongoing aspect of shadow work, of facing yourself and working on yourself to eventually launch yourself up into the great work. And I wanted to do something that I haven't done before, is do a little promo, as Mark Passio used to do. I don't know why I wasn't doing it. I was always just getting into the content. And so if you need the skills, you need to learn how to do things. You don't know how to get started. Like I said, this is an avenue for people who, they're not creating the content themselves, or they might be shy and apprehensive. Well, here you can get more familiar, more acclimated with the environment of having your face online. You don't have to go through the whole setup, and you can come on and speak your mind related to a topic, and that might help you gain the confidence. It's all about getting more confident. Maybe you're not confident enough to put out the work. And how to be the true media, how to become the true media, is one of those ways that you can learn these skills of confidence and how to use the technology, such as this streaming software. I learned this all without this course. I'm like self-learning, and if I want to try something, I figure out how to do it. I'm sure there's plenty of videos online for you to learn, so you don't need to take this seminar, but it's there in I guess you could say a spoon-fed manner, where it's literally taking you step by step to organize your computer, to help organize the information you have and how you're going to do things, and then be able to teach it in a more organized way. So it's good to like an A to Z way, as opposed to trying to go wherever you think you need to go to figure things out. And you can do that as well, or you can take this course and have someone guide you into the process of how to get there to create content of various kinds. So that's how to become the true media. It starts on January 5th. Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah, January 5th. So 3 hours a week. This is Mark Passio's, hosted by Mark Passio. And it's worth it if you need to learn and you don't know how to go about learning all these steps. So you can take that and help you get on your way to rocketing up, launching up. So there was that. There's also the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference coming up, number 5. Yeah, funnel 5 here. So that's February 21st and 22nd, freedomundernaturallaw.com, titled Ignite Hearts and Minds. So to the event that will spark truth, love, and freedom. So that's another conference, igniting hearts and minds, trying to get people ignited. I'm sure, a lot of people will talk about trying to get people activated into caring more and getting into this type of work so that we can potentially have a chance at actually being free. Something that people might care about is being free as opposed to being enslaved or just pretend that they care about. So that's an upcoming conference beginning of next year. All right. Yeah. So, not organized as I usually am. Oh yeah, I don't even have the thing to join. So as I get this done, where is this? Yeah, I'll put on that background. I can talk about the background. This episode is why to begin. So as I mentioned, it's I think that was when I was muted. It's a corollary to the opposite of why people aren't started and the excuses that they give. And that's what we went through in the past 4 episodes on excuses, and this is part of the ongoing series on truth. Sorry, I'm trying to do things and think at the same time. On love or fear, the ongoing series on love or fear, this is 16. And use your microphone. All right, got that set up. Yeah. So this image here, obviously most of my images now are AI generated. They make things look nicer. So why to begin as the corollary to why to not start and excuses for not starting. Now we're talking about beginning that pathway of love, of evolution to evolve our species, evolve ourselves to higher heights. So this image is we're at the beginning of a journey. And here we are at the beginning of a path, and we look forward. And it looks nice at the end, right? So the goal at the end is, hey, it's a nice place and we're living in true freedom. But we have to get there. And to get there, it takes work. That's hence the great work. That's why it's the great work. It's an arduous task. And that's what this is. It's an arduous path towards a goal. It's a journey. And there's an arduous path. So there's a winding pathway. It looks easy at first, but then there's the path disappears. And we're going down into rivers and valleys, and who knows what's there. You could encounter some dangerous predators or whatnot. And yeah, so that's why this image is here, is why to begin, because this is the beginning of the journey. We have a lot of work to do. Where we are collectively as a species is we are not very far. We're doing quite poorly as a species because the condition is that of enslavement. So that means that's not a good condition, that's a poor condition. It's not an optimal condition. And so that path is going to take us to that goal that we have envisioned. And like I said, it looks really nice at the other end, right? There's a nice buildings or whatever. It's there's our utopia, whatever you can think of it as. And there's a nice sun, it's a nice landscape. But that landscape has got treacherous, arduous path of unknowns and tumultuous tribulations and hard way to get there. So it's a lot of work to get from where we are now at the beginning, and we have to get there to the end. But we got to begin. If we don't begin, then we're never going to get to that goal that a lot of people claim that they want to have, but they're not actually doing anything to get there. They're not actually doing anything that's effective to get there because they don't really know how to get there. They don't have the knowledge in hand to get there. A lot of people have this misinformed opinion that, it's through politics, political reform, because that's the only thing they understand. The only thing they can see is within the box of how they're currently thinking and what they can envision. That's why imagination is so important. If you can't imagine the way out or how to get somewhere, then how are you going to do it? How can you possibly then formulate steps to fulfill the requirements of getting to that goal? So people want true freedom, but they don't know how to get there. And they can claim they know how to get there. And when they speak about it, you can tell that they don't know how to get there. And part of that is that knowledge of they don't even understand what freedom is. And again, we've maybe gone into that a bit here and there, but not as deeply. I have a presentation on Natural Law of the Science of Morality, part 3, part 3 on freedom. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's part 3. So Natural Law of the Science of Morality, part 3. Freedom, I go into freedom, explain it. You can go through Passio's work, you can go through other people's work to really get an understanding of what true freedom is, and that's the absence of enslavement. Enslavement is making false claims of ownership upon other people, whereby persistent false claims result in the condition of persistent enslavement and of duress, which is what we're living in now. So to get back on track of this next part in the Fear or Love series of shadow work, these are the reasons for why to begin, the truth of why to begin. They're not reasons as excuses for beginning, reasons as excuses for not beginning. Well, they're not excuses to begin. They're reasons to begin, reasons based in truth, not reasons as excuses, just a reason thing or come out with a rationale for why you can't start. So these are reasons to begin, and to compare them to previous reasons for why you shouldn't begin, or excuses that you tell yourself for why you can't begin, and see how they compare. And you can really tell when you look at these. Once again, this comes from Passio's work on shadow work in like 241 or 242, 243, something around those lines. And those episodes, I don't remember which ones. And these are the pros. So these are the positive reasons of when we're looking at to begin or not to begin the great work. And previous ones we went through, excuses for not to begin. So now we're going through the real truth of why you should and why you need to begin. And one of the reasons that people don't even get here, or they stay stuck in the stagnation, that involutionary pathway, that fear path, is I guess I can go back to the other image or have me more in the center. So is because they don't have that wider agape love. We're not talking about the feeling of love, of loving someone or being in love with someone. It's not the philos or eros aspect, or that you like something strongly. It's the wider agape love care for all beings free from the initiation of harm. And obviously we're focusing on human animals right now and trying to free ourselves before we can free others, which is a logical way to go about it. If you're not free, how effective are you going to be in freeing others while you remain enslaved? So got to free ourselves. And that's the goal of the great work, is to free ourselves. And you can expand that care, expand that identification and that compassion beyond our species, and care for the freedom of all beings and not initiating harm to any of them. So it's that wider compassion and identification beyond just yourself initially, or your family or your loved ones, people you care about, your friends. You have to have that compassion and identification beyond just you and those people you personally have relations with, but towards encompassing a desire for everyone in your species to be free. Not just you and your friends. It's like, hey, what if I could give you and your friends and your family complete freedom, and you'd be totally free and liberated, and everyone else would still be enslaved? And a lot of people would be like, yeah, I'm down for that, because they don't have this wider agape care. They don't have, and that's not motivating them to do that great work. So that's what is lacking oftentimes, is this reason, this truth for why you should begin. Because not only caring for yourself, which is a good motivator, hey, do you want to be enslaved? No? Well, then maybe you should engage in great work if you don't want to be enslaved. So that's caring about yourself. But it can get larger than that, becoming a part, we're recognizing you're a part of something larger than yourself, your species, and you want everyone to be free, everyone to not be enslaved, not just you or the people you personally know in your life, in that small circle of identification that you have. So we're, like I mentioned, we're comparing reasons why you aren't starting, or why you believe you can't start doing this great work of ultimately the moral education, what objective morality is, because without that, freedom is not actually possible. That's why it's the pinnacle, as I refer to it, the ultimate goal is that moral education. And there's lots of peripherals around that, like shadow work and psychology and knowing thyself. All that stuff is important. That's what's going to get you to actualize morality. And so we're comparing what we talked about previously as excuses compared to why you should and must and can be doing it. And you got to look at them honestly, and look at the BS fear side that we talked about, and maybe you who's listening to this identify with and relate to, and say that, oh yeah, I think like that. And we've already gone through those, so check those out. The fear of not having enough resources, of not having enough time, of losing things, losing relationships, losing a job, losing money, not having a skill set, not being able to write, not being able to do a video, not being able to do audio, not being able to, not thinking you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, things like that. So it's good to know how you might be lying to yourself in that aspect, so you can stop doing it. And then you can laugh at it as the joke of an excuse that it is when you look at the positives. And the positives we've already talked about is, one of them was, that wider care. You're caring about, even that selfish care of caring about yourself as you, an individual, and what you want to do for you. So do you want to be enslaved? No. How are you going to end the enslavement? Well, the majority of people need to understand morality so they can stop being immoral if they are, and stop supporting immorality if they are doing that, and act together to put an end to immorality directly. So that's from a selfish perspective, because you're not going to get there on your own. The enslavement is an aggregate aspect. It's a collective. It's a sum total of everyone together. So another one is that, why would you do the great work? So in that is that, as I mentioned earlier, that to get to that state where you're actually free, to have true freedom, the great work is a requirement for that. And our world needs more people speaking. It needs more voices out there that are speaking the truth about morality and things like shadow work and psychology, and the things that can get us to accept morality and live morally and unify morally. And when you get involved in doing that work, then that work, as I said before, it's a potential that can help to awaken others. Not that it's a guarantee, but it's a potential that if you put the work out there, it can potentially reach other people, as mine has, as other people's have. And if I never put the work out there, then it would have never reached the people that it did, and it would never influence them to understand certain things, or understand them better than they heard them previously before, in more depth and more clarity. So essentially your public work, not private work, not talking to people one-on-one. You have to put it out publicly in a wide capacity so it can be widely accessible, and it's findable, searchable. So you have to archive it somewhere and make it accessible so that the widest number of people can access it, and that is through the internet. That is the most widely accessible. And I guess secondary to that would be in books, because you can print out a bunch of books and people can buy the books. So that's another one-to-many relationship where you don't have to be speaking to people individually. You can be doing one individual labor of time that then gets recorded as either a book or an article or an essay or a PDF or an audio or a video, and then that can be accessed by anyone who so desires. And part of the widely accessible is make it as free as possible, because if you're going to sell a book, well, then you got to charge money, so then people got to spend money to get it, and that's going to restrict the access. That's understandable. To, you know, you're spending your time, and especially if you're printing out books, it costs money for the physical materials, so those costs need to be covered, hence the sale of the book. And you can sell it for none of your time. And I think that's part of the higher agape love aspect that you embody this, what we're talking about, what is motivating you, fear or love. Well, part of this higher aspect of love and care and agape is to do it as freely as possible. So if you were to write a book, well, you could write a book that charges for the costs of manufacturing and the shipping and all that. And, you know, you're doing it as a labor of love, that you're not trying to make money off of, like, say, selling 1,000 copies and making some money from your time. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it's an altruistic, a more serving the force of love, of serving the truth. If you were to do that, not that it's necessary. And when you put out work, that you don't put it behind a paywall, as it is referred to, because then it's a barrier of entry into accessing the knowledge, because you have to put out the money to access it. And if it's just free, then anyone can access it. You know, you could always say there's the paywall of the internet. Okay, but how else are you going to access the information? You know, we're not living in Star Trek times with just internet free for everybody or something like that. You know, recognize the world that you currently live in, and, you know, when you put it out, you can put it out as free as you can. So people are obviously going to need an internet connection, but you're not putting it behind a paywall so that, like, hey, if you want this, pay to buy the book, or pay to get the video, or pay to get the audio. Yeah. So, you know, the great work is a requirement for true freedom. The world needs more voices speaking the truth. Your public work will help to awaken others. And by doing so, by doing this work, you are going to contribute to the effort of ending human slavery on Earth. You're going to contribute to it. You alone are not going to make it happen, but you're going to be a contributing factor. It's like, I don't know, an equation or something, an equation, and you're a small part of that equation. You're a grain of sand on the beach, and without all the grain of sands, there is no beach. And each grain of sand does its part to become that beach, or a drop in the ocean, whatever analogy you want to think of. And that's the importance of quantity, what I've referred to in my recent work on the law of freedom, as I call it the principle of quantity, or the principle of the majority. And the more people who get involved, the more the quantity increases, the more effect it can have, the more voices that can potentially reach people who need to hear those voices, the people who aren't aware of this. So that's how important your voices, that's how important your contributions are. You have to take part in this effort, because if you don't, then you don't care enough. So that's part of this dynamic of what what's motivating you? What are you more serving? This force of stagnation, of involution, letting things decay and stagnation by not getting involved. Hopefully you're not actively part of devolving it and pushing it downward, creating immorality, and you're, maybe just stagnating. So you're still in that involutionary force because you're just allowing it to happen. And this is what I refer to in my work as a different type of wrong. It's not the wrong of initiating harm, but it's the wrong of letting harm continue to be initiated so that we continue to be enslaved. You're continuing to accept, tolerate, maybe even support and justify, but in the very least you're tolerating it because you're not doing anything to combat it, to counteract it. And that type of wrong, I've termed it immorality level 2, because it's in that force of involution. Because you're in that force of involution where you're allowing evil to continue. That's not an act of good. That's not a service to morality. It's not a service to good by doing nothing to put an end to evil, to put an end to our enslavement, to put an end to immorality. When you do nothing, you're in that involutionary force. You're hopefully not actively creating it, but you're tolerating it and allowing it by not doing the great work. Because right now that's the only thing we can do. You're not going to be a one-man army who's going to go change the world on your own by making people stop it. The forces of evil, as we could refer to them, are quite strong. And if you try to do that as a one-man army, you're just going to get squashed because you're not going to have the physical ability. We need moral unification to counteract the numbers of people who are immorally unified. So until we get to that point, and hopefully avert that point, if more and more people, this majority that develops, becomes embodying of morality, to be morally self-actualized, then we could avoid that entirely. Maybe not, but that's a good goal to aspire towards. And that's why doing the great work is serving morality, serving good, serving justice, serving what's right. And when you're not doing it, you're not serving what's right, you're not serving what's good, you're not serving morality. So it's an aspect of immorality, not of initiating harm, but it's in that you're not serving morality because you're saying, hey, immorality can continue. So you're being a lesser form of immoral. It's not an actionable immorality because you're not initiating harm. It's a participation where you're tolerating the harm, but it's not a participation where you're creating the harm. So that's something that my presentation, Natural Law, the Science of Morality, Part 4 on morality, I got into that really in depth to really explain it. Because when I first heard Passio say it, I was like, bullshit, this ain't true. And then I had to whenever I do that, I question, well, is it bullshit? How can it be true? I always have to think of what someone's saying. And my initial reaction is no, that's not immoral because it's not initiating harm, so it can't be immoral. So then I had to go through, it took me a while to try to figure out, what is he actually saying by immoral? It's not the initiation of harm. It's not that first degree level of immorality. But how can it be immoral? And it took me a while to mull it over and try to think of it. And then I finally came up with an explanation to get people to understand how, well, there's a first level of immorality, a primary immorality, and then there's a second level of immorality. And they're not the same types of immorality. Just like you can say 2 + 2 is 5 and it's wrong, but it's not the same type of wrong as murdering someone or stabbing someone, assaulting someone. See, there's different types of wrongs. We use words in different ways. And that's why there's immorality of how you're going to create evil. It all has to do with creating evil. And the other one is tolerating the evil, accepting it, potentially supporting and justifying it, even though you're not creating it yourself directly. Those primary evils, the primary immoralities. But you're in that aspect of participating in the evil and in that pathway of evil. So if you're participating in the evil by tolerating it, you're not in the pathway of good in morality. So you're in a pathway of immorality, even though you're not creating it. All right, enough about that. So we're talking about the great work, requirements for true freedom, your effort, speaking the truth, more voices out there. You're contributing to ending human slavery. You're not going to do it yourself. Just because you create one video, it's not one and done. Just because you create 1,000, just because you create 10,000, it's not likely going to end human slavery on Earth. But depending on what you talk about and how high in the explanatory process you go to get people to understand morality and get people to understand doing the great work, which is what I've been doing in the past 2-3 years or whatever, since I came back to creating content. If you're doing that, then people are going to be more able to understand the whole goal behind the great work, why it's needed, why they need to get involved. So that's why I'm pushing for this, because I'm trying to get this more understood by more people. So this purpose, when you acknowledge your responsibility to enact this purpose in your life, there is no higher purpose than restoring and then preserving true freedom, ending human slavery and keeping it that way. That's what the preservation part is. We got to end it, but then there's going to be people who are going to exist who are going to try to make false claims of ownership and perpetuate that and grow that false claim of ownership to encompass more people. So you got to preserve that freedom. You got to deal with those people. We're not at a point where we can actually do that, hence the quantity, the majority that we need to get to a point where we could potentially do that. So that's one way to preserve it, but we got to restore true freedom first before we can preserve true freedom, because you can't preserve something that you don't yet have. So we need to get to the point where it's restored and then preserve it. You got to keep it that way. So this is the higher purpose of the great work, and there is no higher purpose than that. So this can, get into the higher will, the true will of all of us together is one common purpose of, I could say, actualizing our birthright, because our birthright is our natural rights, and our natural rights being respected means that we are free. And it's only because our natural rights are not being respected that our birthright is not being respected, and our birthright hence is to truly be free. So all of our birthright is to have our natural rights respected and to truly be free. So when you recognize that, then the purpose we all have is to reclaim that birthright, to reclaim our sovereignty and our freedom to truly live free. And that's why it's the shared purpose. That's why it's the one great work, as Passio refers to it. I just call it the great work. But the one great work really emphasizes the unitary aspect of it's one thing. And it's for everyone. It's not just for me or for a few little people out there. No, it's just for 100 people. It's just for 1,000 people. Everyone else, it's not for you. The great work isn't for you. No, the great work is for everyone. This higher purpose to end our enslavement and for us to actually be free, to live in true freedom, that is a purpose we all share because of that birthright that we all share. So it's for all of us. As I mentioned before, you're not getting to true freedom on your own. True freedom is for all, by all, or the majority, as I have a little caveat in there that it's for everyone and it's by everyone. Everyone needs to be involved in getting there, and the people who aren't involved and the people who it's not for, true freedom is not for immoral people. True freedom is not for immoral people. Just to make that clear, true freedom is not for immoral people. You are not going to have true freedom if you're being immoral, because you do not deserve true freedom if you're being immoral. By being immoral, you are creating a false claim of ownership, and you're creating an instance of enslavement, and if you propagate that repeatedly, it's a persistent state of enslavement, which is what we have. So that you're making continuous false claims of ownership. So you're robbing, you're degrading and destroying that original state of true freedom, and you're doing it for everyone who's in that area of effect of those false claims of ownership. So you can't have true freedom because you're taking it away. It's impossible. Furthermore, when people are actually morally united, they deal with those people. So you're not going to be free from harm. You're going to be initiating harm, and then that harm is going to be sent back to you to feel the consequences, the repercussions of your actions, so that you understand the feedback loop, the true karmic feedback loop, not a one-way false karma of initiating harm and it being laid at the feet of your victims. It's going to be sent back to you for you to learn the error of your ways. Because without that, there is no learning. There is no incentive to stop. And this is the higher purpose that we all share, is this great work to become free. Because our natural birthrights are all the same. We are born free, and we come into a world of enslavement, and then we become enslaved because of the persistent false claims of ownership that the government makes through continual duress, whereby they coerce us into accepting what they deny us the right to do and force us to do that is immoral. Otherwise, they're going to increase the level of theft, of immorality, from coercion to taking you and physically confining you, or taking you, and if you resist, assaulting you. So each attempt you make to be non-compliant to their edicts of the psychopathic enslavement system, they ratcheted up the degree of severity of immorality they're going to enforce upon you. And that's why it takes numbers to combat this, because they're very large numbers. The majority of people support the state, the police, the government, and what they do, believing it's order. It's all couched behind this false aspect of thinking it's order when it's not actually order. It's chaos. But because of the control they exert, it's giving the appearance of order, because you can... Anyways, it's one of my upcoming presentations on the law of freedom is going to be on order and chaos. The next one, part 8. I'll be getting into this, either part 8 or part 9. I'll get more into it. And this aspect of control. When you order things in your room, when you order things around you, you're exerting control to bring order to it, as opposed to whatever random state or unthinking state where you just throw things around and they just land wherever. Well, that's not very ordered. So the control creates a type of order, but the type of order that is created can be an immoral order, or it can be a true order. Immoral order is a false order, and a true order is one that respects morality, that lives by moral principles. So I don't remember how I got into talking about that, but yeah. This is the higher purpose that we have. So when you look at this true understanding for why to begin, right? Here we are. Here you are. Some of us are further down the road because we're doing the work. We're on the journey. We're on the path. We're doing the work to try to get to that end goal that we're trying to build. And like I said, we're building it together. Whether you're actively a part of it or not, what we are doing to try to get there, you're part of it. Even if you don't know it, even if you don't want to be a part of it, you're already a part of it. Because we're working from that higher aspect of love, that agape true care, more compassion and consideration, identification with others. We're all going to the same place. You just don't know it yet. You don't know that that's where you need to go. A lot of people, they don't even know that that's where they need to go. That's where the work they need to do is going to lead them to. And that's where we're trying to get everyone there, in a place of living morally, so that we can get to that, a new kingdom, a heaven on earth, call it what you will, utopia. I don't really like that term, because I think it means nowhere, right? I think the term utopia actually means nowhere, so it's a bad term to use. If you look at it, what it actually means, it just means nowhere. So yeah, I'll stop using that word. But the general idea is that it's a nice place. I was reading, there's a book my 2-year-old got when he went with his mother to the library in our small town, and it was a word tree. The kid wanted, so the kid in the story he wanted to collect words, and in society he goes out and it's words like on sale, buy now, going fast. It was all like these words of like selling. Oh, it's Christmas time, and he's like, oh, these aren't. I want joyful words and inspiring words and kind words. And so he's like, okay, I'll go out and to a newsstand, and it was all climate change and overheating and health and sickness, or I don't know, all these headlines of like negative things. He's like, oh, that's not very nice. And he goes to hear people talking on the street, and he's like, it's too freaking cold. And the kid's like, I want this. And the parents like, do what I say. And he's like, oh, that's not working. I'm going to go back home. And he's got a bag of words. So he takes his bag of words and he goes out to the park, and there's a tree, and he's inviting people, come put your kind words on the tree. And so they put the kind words and they start chaining words together. And it's, I have it behind me, but I'm not going to go get it. And so one of the chained words is like, things we've heard before. Peace on earth and goodness for all, or something like that. That was what he strung together. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about peace on earth. That's what we're trying to reach here. When everyone, or the majority, I'm not going to say everyone, people we're going to have to deal with, but the majority, pretty much everyone, I'll say pretty much everyone, is morally self-actualized, whereby they are not initiating harm to other beings, then we're going to have our true freedom. We're going to have peace on earth. So the person who wrote that book, they sure as hell don't understand natural law. I can almost guarantee you they don't understand natural law. They don't understand what the requirements are to get to their peace on earth. I'm sure that they are a government supporter and that they believe in authority, and they don't even understand how that is a part of their enslavement, is preventing them from actually having peace on earth. So yeah, I want to talk about that book because it's like, that's what this is all about. The bullshit utopia term that most people think it means, or I guess that's the colloquial new definition, as opposed to it meaning nowhere. And so we gotta do this work to get there, and that's what we're talking about here, is this shadow work. Since I've started the Great Work Launchpad, the first one was on initiation. I don't remember what the first two were on. It's been too long. But starting from episode 3, it was facing the mirror. I forget what I called it. Barriers to initiate. Yeah, the first one was like initiation, or how, and then the second one was how we got started. Me and Brandon talked about how we got started, how we became initiated. And then it was the first original title was Barriers to Initiation, Facing the Mirror, and then I just truncated it all to just shadow work after that. And that's 31 episodes now, is this whole point of shadow work. So we got to do the work on ourselves, because it's part of the way to get there. So we're talking about the great work, right? Great Work Launchpad, yeah, external, do things external. But the first part of that is working on yourself, hence the shadow work. Hence the aspect of what is motivating you. The more of the fear side, more of the force side, more of the love. I don't know why I said fear or love. And it could be a mix of both. And the goal is to work on yourself to get yourself more aligned with the love side as opposed to the fear side. And so that you can get more onto that positive path of creating this optimal outcome for ourselves, which is, getting to that end, that journey. The journey we're on is to get somewhere. We're not on a journey just to go nowhere. The goal is at that end is the kingdom of heaven, etc. You call it what you want. Peace on earth, kumbaya, whatever. And that's where we're going. And to get there, you got to work on yourself. That's why this is Shadow Work episode 31. Going through, I went through Passio's work and try to consolidate it and do this. This whole series is based on getting people to do the work on themselves so that they can do the work to create this. And if you haven't done the work on yourself, how can you possibly create it? If you're still creating immorality, then you're not going to be able to create a moral world. You have to change yourself first before you can change the world. And there's that famous picture, I think it's like Dr. Seuss? No. Well, that's related. The Lorax, unless you care a whole awful lot, things just won't change. They won't. So you have to care for things to change. And part of that caring is to work on yourself. There's that image of like the guy standing up and who wants change? And everyone raises their hand in the crowd. And then he says, who wants to change? And then everyone puts their hand down and some people start walking away because people don't want to do the change themselves. That's why the dialectic of political parties and seeking a ruler external to yourself and supporting authority, because you want them to do the work. You want them to be in charge with changing the world. You want them to be, hey, we're going to get government and we're going to vote people in power and they're going to tell us what to do and they're going to control us. And then they're going to punish us when they make up ridiculous rules like you can't drink or you can't smoke or you can't do this and you can't do that. And then they're going to punish us. And yeah, that's how we're going to get to free. We're going to get here. We're going to get to the end here. We're going to get to our peaceful world by living in a system like that where these people just create fake laws in competition with the true laws of the universe. And they're like acting like gods where they can be, hey, I can create laws too. There's laws, I can create laws. That's supposed to be something that's objective and true in the universe, but hey, I can just make them up and then I'm going to make you follow them. And hey, have fun with that. Because you know where that's going. I'm taking you there. You don't have to do any work. You see that? That's a nice place. Well, that's where I'm taking you. I'm a politician. I'm an authority. And I'm part of that. I'm a police. I'm the military. I'm part of that. I'm doing that work to get you there. Don't you know? Stupid person, you sheep. Jeez. I'm the one doing the work to get you here. You should respect me more. You should like me more. You should praise me more. I'm doing the work to get you here as a part of this authoritarian system. Don't you know? Don't you know that's what's happening? Is you don't have to do any work. You just sit back, sit in the cart, and I'm going to pull you there. All of us in authority. We're the ones who are actually going to create that nice little world at the end. We're going to bring peace on earth. Don't you worry about it. All you got to do is vote every 4 years and bitch and whine and complain online and vote for someone else next time who promises things and just keep doing that, going round and round in a hamster wheel and keep doing that for a few 10,000 years and we're going to get there. I promise you. We're going to get there. You just keep voting harder. You're not voting hard enough. You gotta vote harder. You gotta. If you're using paper ballots, you gotta really, really, really put that pen to the paper with a lot more force. And we're gonna get there because authority is the way to your happiness and your freedom and peace on earth. And I tell you, that's the best way to get there. Do not get involved yourself. Do not learn things. do not take on the responsibility to edify yourself and understand these principles. Do not take on the responsibility to educate others. No, 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 no. You just got to externalize it all out, give it to other people, and say, hey, I don't want that responsibility. I do not want to take on that responsibility of getting people educated, because government, you're doing such a good job with the education system and everything in the media, and you're just doing awesome in your moral education. Clearly, we're going to get there, because freedom has nothing to do with morality. We don't need to teach morality anywhere in society and actually know what it is objectively. We don't need that at all. Of course not. Why would we possibly need that? Because freedom is completely not based on morality. So you don't need to know what morality is. You get to just make it up, whatever you want, what everyone has a consensus upon. Well, then you're going to be free. Whatever you can agree upon as being moral and as the way you want to act, if everyone agrees on it, right? Democracy, the majority rules, you got that consensus, well, then there you go. There's your freedom. As long as 51% get what they want, then there's your freedom. The other 49%, you can go fuck yourself, right? 51% decide, and that's the way it goes. Or 30%, 31% versus 30%, and the other 35% didn't vote because they don't play the bullshit game of voting in politics. And then even there, then it's even worse, because it's not even a majority of the people. It's only of the majority of the people who voted, which is a smaller percentage than the majority of everyone together, because there's a lot of people who don't vote, don't play the bullshit game. And yeah, that's how silly things are, that people don't think about this, they don't understand it, and they just keep playing the game because that's the only thing. They're stuck in a box. That's their imagination. The only way we're ever going to have peace is if we just ban everything that can be harmful. And no one needs to be responsible, because we're just going to have government taking charge of everything. And then we are going to be free. That's how it's going to happen. They're just going to control every aspect of the world. We need more technocracy. We need more control. We need more laws. We need more of all that. And that's going to bring peace, because with more control and more order, well, we need laws for more control and more order. And all that law and order and control, we're going to make things so tight and bound, and where you can't even move. So you can't even move to do anything wrong. And yes, we're going to be free that way. Yeah. And this is how people think, ultimately, because that's why they vote, because they want their form of control over certain things and what people are allowed or not allowed to do, to be what is the ruling party, the ruling power of the land, of that particular area they are in. They want it to be how they want things to be. And then the other people are voting for someone else to make it how they want things to be. Because no one's on that true page of, not no one, but the majority are not on that true page of morality to understand, you don't want to be harmed. You don't want other people to be harmed. Wouldn't that be peace if you're not harmed and other people aren't harmed? Yeah, but you don't even know how to get there. And you just keep supporting a system that's going to keep harming and keep harming and keep harming. And yeah, that's the joke. Big joke. Joke's on us. That's why. You got to get involved in the great work. Start somewhere. Learn what you need to learn. Learn the knowledge. Plenty of resources. Go through Passio's podcasts several times if you need to. Really ingrain it as you go through it. You can write stuff, so you don't need to memorize it. You can write it as you go through. Hey, you talked about this. Okay, let me remember. Okay, let me go back and re-listen to it. And you write it down. You write an article. Write an essay. Do something. Start from there. Start to really have that knowledge within you so that you can expound upon it when these topics come up, and you can join in other people taking part in this effort to increase the voice of truth. And you can participate, you can create your own content, and so that you can speak things, because in writing it can take a lot more time, and when you want to speak it, it can be a lot harder to formulate the words. So you got to really have that knowledge. So work on yourself, get that knowledge in you, work on yourself to unfuck yourself, unfuck your mind. Moral unison, learn how to think, learn how to process information, learn how to not be deceived by yourself, by your biases, by fallacies, errors in reasoning, and move forward towards eventually being on the journey, by the journey of the great work, you could call it the outer great work, of trying to create true freedom. Because you just working on yourself is not helping the understanding of morality reach more people. That's a necessary part that starts with you. And all this is a lot of work. You gotta work on yourself. It's not just watching TV and playing games and blah, 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 going out to restaurants, going out to parties, shows, festivals, movies, la, 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 keeping busy externally. Doing the work on yourself is a lot of work. And then doing the work to take what's in you and share it with others to try to influence them, that's even more work. So all this is why it's the great work, because the great work we're talking about, the one great work, is that external part, but it necessitates the internal part first. So all that is part of all that work, because the outer part ain't getting done without the inner part first. So I think I'll end it there, and we'll continue. I was thinking maybe I'd get through the whole thing in one episode, but I guess I talked a lot on peripheral things that were related to it. So thanks for coming by. Was a bit disorganized, was late, didn't have my audio right, forgot to turn on my software, and I had to rechange everything. And anyways, it is what it is. Talked about a few of the reasons why to begin, and we'll continue that next time. So have a good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Take care. Peace.